Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He is Frank. We are going to be talking about some Bears football, kind of, sort of, maybe a little bit. I don't know. The
Yeah.
Bears possibly need a running back or two in the draft. Well, probably not two. Probably just the one, if they even need the one. But we're going to talk about them anyways. Frank and I are going to rank our top 5 running back prospects, following up last week's quarterback episode. Next week, ideally, we're going to group the wide receivers and tight ends together. Just make a big pass catching thing because Frank will probably be able to rank 3 tight ends, maybe
At least
1,
2.
2.
Absolutely 2. Yeah.
At least two. But the wide receivers are definitely where Frank and I feel we're probably pretty good in terms of scouting them. But the running backs, we'll have to see. It's a little bit different of a project. But Frank, there was some conversation that we've been putting off for 2 months now because things just kept popping up. The trading of the number 1 pick, the signing of free agency, all that good stuff. And we kind of just sort of kept pushing back the Will Anderson versus Jalen Carter debate because we just kind of kept running. Things popped up. Now we don't have to talk about Will Anderson unless Ryan Poles gets super ballsy and trades up to number 3, which I don't think you or I foresee happening in this lifetime. I think it's safe to talk about Jalen Carter at the very least because there's a lot of questions, and I'm sure a lot of Bears fans have questions about it as well. So Frank, let's just start right there. In terms of, let's save the player for a second, but let's talk about position. Because obviously in this specific scheme, the interior line is super important. The 3 technique is one of the most important positions in the entire defense. Obviously, Jalen Carter fits the bill of that position. He was thought to be a potential number 1 overall pick when the Bears still had the number 1 overall pick. And then some of the character concerns came out. Like I said, we'll get to the player in a second. The Bears tried desperately to sign a right tackle at the start of free agency. Mike McGlinchey, they were in talks in regards to some other guys as well. Didn't end up happening. Now right tackle seems like still a pretty big hole. At 9, if you're Ryan Poles, put your little Ryan Poles hat on. I don't know if he wears a hat or glass. He doesn't really. He's just kind of there.
Trench coat. I'll get my trench.
Trench coat. There you go, with the popped collar.
Yep.
Make sure that collar is very popped. What are you doing at 9?
I'm going offensive tackle, Jack. We've already seen, and that can be left or right. Paris Johnson sounds like he's being scouted to play either, depending on which scout you ask, which team you ask, or who decides to sort of speak on it. Seeing some clips of Larry Borum in a right tackle stance, unless it was recorded through a mirror. Point blank though, Jack, the only way that I don't go offensive line there is if I feel like Najiba can make this offense or can have the impact on this offense that Jamar Chase had with the Bengals, when it was very clear that everyone wanted them to go Penei Sewell, and they were like, nope, we're getting our guy. But regardless, it has to be offense for me. I know very early on, we said if the Bears stay at number 1 because people don't want to trade up or for whatever, we're going Will Anderson. But that's because I do think he's one of the, I don't know, handful, if you're counting quarterbacks as well, of people who can like really change the landscape. Jalen Carter was one of those guys as well of your team, that they're generational. Once you get beyond that, I don't know, like left tackles they're super important. I don't know if you'd label anything generational, but the trenches still matter, right? And I guess I said all that to say we can't, even if, I know we're going to get to more specific Jalen Carter, even if he's there, I'm so ready for this franchise to just get away from everything as defense. Even though it sounded like we were leaning defense early, I feel like on the fucking cusp of being a modern NFL franchise, that if we can just continue to build this offense up, Even if that means the edges that we draft or the nose tackles that we draft in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round don't make the impact that is needed for a really good defense, a really good Matt Eberflus defense, if we kick that can down the road, I am okay with that. I need them to build the offense first. I like when you're looking down you're looking at the landscape of things in the next few years, even the contracts that Ryan Poles paid out, you have an out after 2 years with everyone he signed. That all is pointing towards that's when we're going to have to re-sign Justin Fields. And I told you, we were texting about this. I don't want the Bears to be in the position that the Giants were in, where some of it could just be Daniel Jones, right? Like, I don't personally think he's that good of a talent itself. But they also didn't support him very well. So what happens is they get a coach who coaches him up to have the best year of his career, but you're still like, is he really the franchise guy? But because you don't, we're like, where do we go from here? We made the playoffs. We have no idea, if moving on from him with a mid-round first or just whatever, who knows what the Colts have figured out the hard way, the veteran market, what that can be. We're just gonna have to go ahead and pay him premium money anyway. Knowing that Justin has the talent that even if you don't support him now, you're going to be like, man, we probably got to pay this guy. Let's continue to support him. Let's continue to build around him. So when that time comes, we got to pay him $40 million a year. We're at least like, yeah, he's undoubtedly the dude. Or on the flip side, and this is something we've talked about all the time, if he just winds up absolutely flopping, you leave no doubt. If he just regresses and turns out to be not very good, okay, well, we gave you DJ Moore. We gave you Paris Johnson or Peter Skoronski. We gave you these guys. You had real weapons. And it just didn't work. We got to move on from you. Sorry. So I would be, long-winded way of saying, Jack, I would be all in on one of the tackles. And the only way is if I'm feeling a little zesty that day off of like a Tito's or something, and I'm taking Najiba. But yeah, there's just, you can't, at this point, you cannot change my mind from, not you, just the general you. Like, my mind can't be changed.
Yeah, I think the free agency kind of dictated what they're going to do. And again, it kind of goes back to why you and I both really like that Ryan Poles made the trade when he did, because it really let them hone in on what they could sign, what they should sign. Because if they get Mike McGlinchey at right tackle, right, the offensive line, Nate Jones at guard, they're looking pretty solid. Maybe you draft a center in the 2nd round. Or a left guard or whatever you want to do in the interior in the 2nd round, then you have a little more freedom to work with that first overall or that first pick and then at number 9 overall. You can go, like you said, Smith Najiba, who has familiarity with Justin Fields, or you could go Jalen Carter or someone else on the defensive line. I think right now, based off of the way they attacked free agency in terms of right tackle specifically, I think that's their number 1 priority. I would be absolutely shocked at this point if they don't go tackle. That's even without the character concerns for Jalen Carter that I think we really do got to talk about. Ryan Poles was asked at the owners meeting on Monday of this previous week if he feels like the Bears are in a position to draft a player with character and maturity concerns. And he basically said, we're at a better place to draft a player with character concerns. I think taking the time here to get to know the guys in the locker room and understanding the maturity level there. But at the same time, we also want to be careful because we're still young and impressionable. So I think that making sure that we continue to bring a good core group is important. Maybe down the road, you want to take a risk like that. I think the locker room begins to run itself so you can take some chances. But right now, we need both. We need talent, but at the same time, I'm going to be a little cautious of bringing in the wrong type of person. I think right then and there, that tells you exactly what they're going to be doing at the number 9 spot. I would be shocked, Frank, if they don't go with one of the tackles. Now, maybe the draft dictates what they do, right? We can say, we think they could go with Paris Johnson or Peter Skoronski, and you and I would be happy with either. However, as we kind of figured out during free agency, it really is going to come down to scheme fit. And you and I, we're not experts on the offensive line like Ryan Poles is. He knows what he's looking for. If he deems that Peter Skoronski isn't going to be the right fit for them at right tackle, and Paris Johnson is already off the board, and Jalen Carter's just kind of sitting there, maybe that's the direction they go. It's very possible that happens. Does the character concern for you? Are you concerned by that? Some of the character issues, some of the pro day where he's just fucking gassed and winded and kind of looking a little chubby. We had heard that he was out of shape. He admitted he was out of shape in the semi-championship round before coming into the championship game like ready to go. Where are you at with Jalen Carter in terms of maybe the person as opposed to the player?
Yeah, that's the good question. Before I get to that, I will say the other scenario in which people are starting to account for is that now that we understand that scheme fit matters very much on that offensive line, and if Jalen Carter is still there, Ryan Poles may trade back again because there are guys that may be there in the mid-teens that have been mocked to the Bears. And again, I'm no offensive line guru, but the more that people and scouts are like breaking these guys down, there doesn't seem to be as much separation between Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski, and some of these other guys. So that's also a possibility. But yeah, to be honest with you, Jack, the biggest concern that I have with Jalen Carter is the pro day stuff. And it's so funny because I thought, like, how ironic is it that for quarterbacks, I don't give a damn about your pro day. Like, for me, tape and sort of, leadership qualities, that type of thing. Arm talent matters to a very large degree, but I don't think you get that off of the tape. You don't get that when you're in shorts and a t-shirt and you're, throwing 60-yard bombs to non-covered receivers. But with other prospects, it's like, it's one of those things where you're not really going to get like an extra, nudge from me of like, man, if Jalen just looked like a beast, like, I know that I saw his tape already. But you can get negative marks if you do what happened with him, where it's like you're out of shape. It's like you're midway through some drills and you just look gassed. It's, because that to me, it's not about the shape that you're in. People can get out of shape in the off season, right? Like you have every other year in the future to do that for. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you just work out all year round like a lot of elite athletes do. But some people don't. Some people use training camps to legitimately get back in shape, and that's okay. It's made a career out of that. But this is the only time that you get to show off before. I mean, this is like I forgot who worded it this way, but I really like the comparison. This is an open book test. Like, you have the answers. Just come in, remain in shape, show why you're one of the elite, and then be lazy after that. And if you want to use training camp to get back in shape, like, do your thing. But this is just the one day. Like, to me, some of this can be assumption. Don't get it twisted. I'm not like acting like I know what's going on, but I'm just thinking of like, I'm almost equating it to almost the real workforce. Like there's sort of red flags where I'm like, you're a little immature for this job. I don't think this one's for you in like interviews and things. That to me is a sign of immaturity. That to me that's a sign of you not taking this as serious as I need you to. And this is Ryan Poles' hat still on, because if you're not taking this serious, what are you going to take serious? And that may change over time. Some people are just immature, but you sort of think about like, that to me is also could play into like your competitive nature. Like, are you not, or even like your cockiness? You think like you've got this far and you like, that's it. That's all the work is done. Like you just think your name precedes you. You know what I mean? Like, again, assumptions. I don't know what I would think if I was actually Ryan Poles, but those are the things that cross my mind. Like, almost like the arrogance that comes with it, the cockiness that comes with it. Like, I want my players to be arrogant to a degree and cocky to a degree, but not like that. When I think of like arrogance and cockiness, that's good. I think of like Floyd Mayweather, Sauce Gardner, who's like talking and putting on, hey, you earned that. When you play that well, you earn that arrogance. You don't have the arrogance just coming in. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying like, shut up and just play football. Absolutely not. I love me a trash talker. I love me a guy who can get you amped, but this isn't the time for that right now. You're still a college prospect. You have to sort of earn that right to, to that cockiness. So I think Poles said it correctly. I hate that he said that, because that was sort of my take going into it. It's like, I don't think this team is even ready to take on someone who may have a character issue like that. They're clearly building something. Character matters. That was the first thing they talked about when they introduced DJ Moore. They didn't talk about he's a phenomenal receiver. That came along with it, but they were like, this guy's a locker room presence. This guy's been in the league for a long time. He's awesome in the locker room. He's going to be great for our football team. I don't know if Jalen Carter is that. And again, I just don't think we have the biggest thing with Poles' quote. He's right. People sort of overrate, I think, like how much a coach actually like leads a team. You think about the way Lovie Smith did it. He did it by almost having like 5-star generals leading the charge in Lance Briggs, Brian Urlacher, Peanut Tillman, Tommy Harris for a couple of. These are the dudes who are on the front lines, like having that leadership, like that middle management, if you will, and like a structure. And like Lovey was sort of the guy like making the chess moves with that. We don't have that. Who was that person on this team? Even like later than that, like Kyle Long was almost one of those like ambassador type of guys who was like, you're coming in this locker room. This is how we roll. The Bears don't have that right now. And without that, you know, again, like a coach can only do so much doing that with millionaires. It's going to be a locker. It's going to be a culture that's set within the players themselves. So I don't touch Jalen Carter with the 10-foot pole at this point.
Yeah, I think honestly, if they put if this was a year from now, I'd probably say they probably could, because I do think they've signed some leaders, Tremaine Edmonds being one, TJ Edwards obviously as well, to really step up and be the leaders in that locker room. But it's such a new group; they haven't played a game yet together. So you're right. There's not a lot of veteran leadership. There's not someone who can kind of stick with him and show him the ropes essentially of how to be. Not that there aren't anyone who could do that, but I think this is a different case. And, you know, one of the things I've seen people defending Jalen Carter for is, well, you know, mentally he probably wasn't in the right headspace that day. Well, the reason for that is because he made a really dumb decision and was involved in something that got somebody killed. That's not an excuse. That's to me, that just shows even more so a lack of responsibility, accountability. I agree with you. At this point, I would go offensive line or just continue to trade back. I don't think Jalen Carter is really worth the hassle at this point.
And that's just my thought. There were two things though, right? There was the drag racing incident, which I'm still a little confused about. At first, the initial report was that he was the one driving the car, but then it turns out he was not. He was in the passenger seat, but he did flee the scene because he was scared, which to me, fleeing the scene in that type of situation, that's like human nature. That's like fight, flight, or freeze. You panic. I'm not taking anything with that. Obviously, the outcome of that situation is awful, but he did speak with authorities, and I don't know if someone got charged, but he did not, so he was in the clear there. But then there was also a DUI. Was there not? But like a cop let him go. Like he did blow, and he blew the what is the meter, the breathalyzer, and but they let him go because they were like, we don't want you to get in trouble. I mean,
so it's gonna happen when you're in Georgia playing football for the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs, yeah. Frankie.
That is very true.
He just doesn't seem like a guy who makes very good decisions, at least at this time. And you know, maybe he matures into that down the road. But you're right. I don't think the Bears are in a position where they should. They're not a 3 technique away from winning the Super Bowl. There's still so many fucking holes on this team.
Yep.
And Ryan Poles clearly believes in bringing in quality people, team first athletes, and I think. I kind of see that with the trade of Roquan Smith, which is popping up again because your favorite podcast, not naming any names, had they were talking to Samurai Mike, and he said that the trade for Roquan really bothered him, which I know that that really matters. His opinion, Mike Singletary's opinion, really matters to you, Frank.
Well, Mike Singletary pulled down his pants. In front of grown men when he was the head coach of the 49ers. I love him for who he is, but he's a little bit of a weird guy. And clearly, talent evaluation was never really his thing. But yeah, I mean the Roquan, can we just get past that as a city? Because again, like the only thing that the regret that I have in that situation is that they didn't try him at the mic. I would have loved to see if he can play the mic because he's an interior guy. But the more I'm thinking about, and hearing other people's thoughts on it, like, I don't even know if that fits because Tremaine Edmonds is 6'5". I mean, he's built like Brian Urlacher. He's built for that cover 2 type of zone thing. And I don't know if Roquan was ever that. So in terms of like prototype, body type of thing, I probably never even looked at him in that mold. And he just clearly didn't fit the cover 2 defense. Like, he just did not look good. He immediately went right back to a 3-4, and he looked great again. That's who he was drafted to be. And I think that's, that's his fit. But yeah, I just want Chicago to get over that. But I think that does add to your point, though. People, for whatever reason, just maybe weren't paying attention because the Bears hadn't been very good. He had some off the field stuff with the Bears that were very strange. He missed the game, and we still don't know why he missed that game. And by all accounts, people who have any sort of inkling of being in the know have literally said it's because he just didn't feel like playing that week. And if that's the case, that's absurd.
Yeah. I think we'll be okay without Roquan Smith, and I know we'll be okay with Samurai Mike sharing his thoughts on Bears. I remember he wanted to be the Bears head coach, and they said no, thank you. We're good. That's incredible. Yeah. So I think it's good conversation. I think obviously if the Bears were still in the number 1 slot right now, you and I would both be taking Will Anderson over Jalen Carter regardless. Now, obviously, that's not the conversation. The conversation then shifts to, okay, now we're in the 9 spot. What do we want to do as the Chicago Bears? And I think you and I both agree that offensive line is the way to go. Frank, outside of that, there really hasn't been a whole lot of movement in terms of the Bears. They haven't added, I don't think they've added like any pieces since the last podcast. I have seen some rumors floating around that they may be interested in possibly trading for the Washington Commanders' Montez Sweat. And that might be because the Commanders may need to clear some cap space because they may be trying to go get Lamar Jackson, who very vocal about what's been going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah.
A very interesting situation. Frank, I can't remember where you landed. I think the last time we talked about Lamar Jackson, you had agreed with me that he's probably done in Baltimore, right? Are you still there? You feel like that's kind of the case?
I am there, and there's going to be a team that goes all in on him. If there was a team that went all in on Deshaun Watson, and there was multiple, because if I'm remembering right, this sort of started off in the same trajectory. We're not super interested. That's not what we want to. And all of a sudden, here's $250 million guaranteed from the Cleveland Browns. And not for nothing, I know people make fun of the Browns for doing that. Rightfully so, do your thing. But they did that to supersede what New Orleans was offering and what there was another team in
Atlanta. Wasn't it Atlanta?
It maybe was Atlanta. I'm not remembering now. But point being, they did that as the last, like, okay, we need this guy. This is what we're going to do. Like, they didn't just do that just to do it. And again, make fun of the decision, guaranteed for the nasty man. I understand that. But the point I'm making is they did that because there was a ton of interest by other teams. And there was a bidding war here. And it's like, if they did that for him, there's going to be a couple of teams that are bidding against themselves, bidding against each other for Lamar.
Yeah.
I know Atlanta says they're all in on Desmond Ridder. I know Indy says they're done with vets, but this is a difference. He's not like an old guy that you're just retreading. This is a guy who's still in the prime of his career.
I think the closer we get to the draft, the more likely a trade will happen because you'll really start to get how teams feel about certain quarterbacks. If the Colts genuinely feel like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson will be there at 4, and they genuinely believe that they have superstar qualities, then yeah, they probably won't make the move. But if they think, Levis is like a B+ candidate, and they think a B+ quarterback, I should say, and they think Lamar Jackson can put them right back into title contention, they've got a lot of money tied up in the offensive line, defensive line. Like, their team wasn't very good last year, but you're hoping that the coaching staff can kind of bring things out of certain guys. They can fix up the offensive line. Maybe they still think they're a quarterback away. I just can't foresee, you got John Harbaugh out here talking about how, we love Lamar, we love him. And, like, I get it. Like, what else is John Harbaugh really going to be able to say? But, like, talk is cheap, and Lamar clearly believes the same. If they truly loved him, they would have paid him because Lamar is one of those guys that you pay. Granted, I'm not saying this for other teams. I'm saying your homegrown team. You've done things specifically for him. He won an MVP. Like, if he's a guy that you pay, nobody's gonna be like, oh my, like, why would they pay him that money? That makes sense. You know, like, I've talked about my feelings towards paying Lamar Jackson, but if from the Ravens' perspective, I guess they're sort of starting to fall into the territory of, what's the plan? What's the plan here? Because if they do lose Lamar Jackson, that roster kind of sucks, man. Like, I know that Snoop is a fucking Pro Bowl quarterback, which is just wild. But you know what? Mitch Trubisky is also a Pro Bowl quarterback. So there you go. I just don't quite get what the Ravens are trying to do, especially they just paid the guy we were just talking about, Roquan Smith. They just paid him $100 million.
Yeah.
So they're not blowing it up.
Again,
what's the plan, you know?
I don't know what the plan is, but I think they have unique leverage in this situation because, just like you said, they made Huntley a Pro Bowl quarterback. And again, even though I think Lamar has superseded what he was when they had to do this, but they shifted their whole offense to cater to him. I think they're feeling themselves a little bit and think we can get like a Geno Smith guy, what happened in Seattle, and make it work. Which to me is it's not silly, that mindset, because they've proven it to be true. But again, like, Lamar has superseded that with his talent and what he's done. Like, why would you even want to be in that situation again? Why would you force yourself to even test that theory again when you have a guy, you know? But again, I do think what it really comes down to, Jack, is this to me feels like a conspiracy of ownership of all the owners. They do not like when players don't have their own agents. And again, we have our own thoughts on that. And I think it's sort of, unless you have some sort of law degree or have had, you know, took courses on law in college, I think it's silly. But some guys just want to do it. And we've seen this time and time again. The owners and GMs will play hardball with guys for whatever reason. I don't know what the pay structure would be if agents are, you know, giving a little bit off the top to this, or who knows what the actual structure is. But that has been a constant since I can remember paying attention to free agency and extensions and things like that. They have the toughest time re-signing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it gets personal. You feel Lamar is not making things easier by him speaking out. I understand he wants to have his own perspective out there. He wants to control the narrative, but has that really ever worked?
But again, though, we talked about this with Roquan. When you don't have your own agent, that's the only way to do that. But again, that only comes across as immature for you. When you go on social media, I understand you want to get your word out there, but you also have to understand that you look like a child now. Even though this may be the best avenue for you in the moment, because there's no other way for you to get that out there. You don't have like the official press release from Clutch Sports or from whoever. But it's not always the best look to do it that way. You know what I mean? So
yeah, this whole saga is unfolding.
I want it to end. Like, I think when I was younger, I like ate up the drama aspect of sports. Sure. I don't like it anymore.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you a question. What do you want to end more? Do you want Lamar to sign somewhere, or do you want Odell Beckham Jr. to sign with the Dallas Cowboys?
I feel like I feel like Odell has sort of died down. No,
dude, Ian Rappaport still every fucking chance he gets.
Yeah, I get it, but it wasn't like last year. It was a thing in the middle of the year.
Just wait.
He's coming back for the playoff. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I feel like it's died down. I thought you were gonna ask me about Aaron Rodgers. I thought you were gonna ask if I wanted that to end.
Dude, he's still. I texted my Packers friend earlier yesterday, and I just literally said Aaron Rodgers is still a Packer. LOL. Like, that's fucking wild, man.
I know.
It's been weeks, and there's been no traction on it. It's so strange. I think it's fucking hilarious that the Packers could end up not getting a first-round pick for Aaron Rodgers, because, again, it goes back to what we had talked about last year. They should have fucking traded him. Right when that Russell Wilson trade happened, the Packers should have been like, Russell Wilson just went for this. Who wants Aaron Rodgers? Come get Aaron Rodgers coming off his MVP season. Yep. He's still got something to prove. Give us 4 first-round picks.
We were called every name in the book for just having an objective take And we were right. I just don't like, I don't even understand how you can look at what we were saying last year from a logic standpoint and say like we were hating, especially because it wasn't like, oh, we just wanted to get him out of our division. Like, he's old. It's going to happen anyway. And he still had owned us. Like, that wasn't our angle. Like, if you're just talking about what was best for the Packers organization, that's what it was. Because what did you get? An 8-win year or what, 9, whatever they want, and missed the playoffs. Like, that team has hit its peak already. It's time to blow it up, or at least retool.
Well, and Packers fans have got to be going through it, with their head coach saying temper your expectations for Jordan Love, and Andy Reid literally not remembering
not
the
knowing
guy who started.
Jesus,
he started a game against them.
He sure did.
Jordan Love did, and Andy Reid is like, I don't fucking care about that game.
Yeah,
too busy worrying about where I'm going to get to eat afterwards. That's incredible.
All right, Jackie, are we talking about these running backs?
Let's get to it, Frank. Let's get to it. Let's rank our 5 running backs. Spoiler alert, Frank and I have the exact same top 5 because I really, this is a top-heavy running back class, man. It kind of feels like this has been the trend for a while. You get like 1 or 2, and then maybe like a surprise guy or 2. I think of guys like Rashad White and Dameon Pierce, who I think performed a lot better. But Frank, let's be realistic. A lot of these rankings could be determined by the draft and where certain guys land. You think about the Bengals being a possible destination, but there's still things that have to happen. Austin Eckler still needs to be moved. If he does end up getting moved from the Chargers, where he goes may change everything. So there's still plenty of time for movement to happen, to occur. But right now, who are I'll just let you go through it, our top 5 running backs? I know we have them in a little different of an order, but a
little bit different of an order, but I think the sentiment remains the same. So the 5 in no order: Bijan Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tajay Spears, and Devin, is it Achane?
I thought it was Ashane.
Ashane, okay. I was watching clips and people were pronouncing it sort of differently as they went.
It's a cool last name. What can I say?
That is our 5. The other one who I think has the potential to be in the mix in there was Zach Evans. He was like my 6.
I would have said Sean Tucker from Syracuse would be my 6th, if you will.
Yeah, Tucker, I scouted him. There was one more that I did not write down. It was Evans, Tucker.
Tank Bigsby?
No, not Bigsby. I don't know who the fuck it was.
Miller from TCU?
No.
Okay.
There was one more, and I'm blanking. I said the same thing last year. This is the thing. With like receivers and quarterbacks, it really doesn't matter what order that I watch. It can be sort of, watching film, looking at other people's notes, and sort of seeing if I see the same thing that they see or see things differently. With running backs, I have to start at the top of like guys who, like, Bijan has been renowned as the guy for months now. Watch him. Charbonnet and Gibbs were the other 2 that I kept seeing 2 and 3, so I watched them. Once I start to see that drop off of like, okay, these look like every other running back, that's where I just stop. I'm like, it's going to look like this for everybody. And like Zach Evans was, to me, when I started to see like everyone else felt the same I was, sort of going through. Full disclosure, my number 5 at this point, because I may have ranked Zach Evans above Achane, but I reserve my number 5 spot for my favorite scat back every single time. I did it with who was the guy that the Packers drafted in the 7th round a couple years ago?
Kylan Hill.
Kylan Hill. Love him. Small guy, scat back, throw him in there. So that's why I had Achane at number 5 for me. Quick notes on him, and I can toss it to you. He reminded me a lot of like Chris Thompson, that type of mold. I can see him lining up in the slot, causing matchup problems with linebackers. I don't ever think he's gonna be, a bell cow number 1 type of dude, but you think of like fantasy relevancy, you can see him being like a JD McKissick type of dude. That type of player in a pass happy offense. you may have a flex guy for a couple years in a dynasty. But I thought the biggest thing that's going to help keep him on the field if he wants to be more than that is going to like. I was watching some of his pass blocking. It is not good. Was it may just be a size thing. But yeah, he was. I also like these were also the 5 guys to me, Jack, and I should have put that in the disclaimer of like when you talked about like there are certain guys that just come in. The first thing that I note when I start to look at drop off now, and this has been the last couple of years, last 2 years in particular, has been like explosiveness. These were the 5 most explosive guys to me that I was looking at. So they all have a level of explosion that I think that the other guys below that I would have, if I kept ranking, did not have. And then you sort of rank them based on the other traits that they have. Obviously, Devin or Devon, he didn't have the size. He may not have the durability. But he presents a unique skill set to get him on the field somewhere pretty early on in his NFL career.
So I'm going to give you my favorite prospect outside of the main guys. Bijan should be one of those guys who just steps right in. It's like essentially Saquon Barkley again. Maybe not Hall of Fame expectations right away, but like Bijan has been the guy people have been excited about for 3 years now. So he should be very good. I think it's going to be more of a toss up between Gibbs and Charbonnet. Again, it'll depend on landing spots. But Frank, Tajay Spears, another Tulane guy.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of Matt Forte. I'm just gonna say it. He's kind of like the receiver that you'd expect. You'd hope he'd be. There's a certain team in Chicago that needs a pass catching running back. I think that'd be a nice little option for him right there. I love Tajay Spears. I think he's going to be, given situation, I think he's going to be in a very good spot, to very good potential to be a very good running back in this league. Kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier. It's really going to come down to landing spots. They're the NFL.com. They ranked teams that needed immediate help before free agency. Some of it's changed a little bit, some of it not. The Broncos are a team I could see maybe drafting a running back. Who knows what Javonte Williams will look like. The Dolphins, I would be absolutely shocked if the Dolphins don't draft one of these guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, kind of right out of the Shanahan playbook. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers drafted one of these guys at some point as well. But Frank, I really do think the Bears, we could see one of these guys going to Chicago, because as much as fans loved Herbert last year, especially when David Montgomery was out, we kind of saw what happened when there was another running back in town. They really couldn't use 2 running backs. It's something you talked about last week when we talked about David Montgomery signing with the Lions. Khalil Herbert isn't a sure thing. It's not guaranteed that he's going to be their bell cow, especially with the signing of Donta Foreman, something else we talked about last week. I really think the Bears might draft one in the first 3 rounds, depending on scheme fit, depending on what style of running back they're really looking for. Again, Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman are probably more similar than those two are probably more similar than David Montgomery is. So if you're trying to replace David Montgomery, you're going to want some sort of pass catching back. Maybe that is Tajay Spears or Ashane. Maybe it's one of those 2 guys.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to be in the market for someone who's a little bit more explosive than those guys are. Speaking of, I guess we're just sort of all over the place, which is fine because we have the same 5. The guy who actually reminded me of Khalil Herbert, who I don't know if the Bears would be in on, was Charbonnet. He was more explosive, but what reminded me of him is he's like a downhill guy. He's a one-cut vision type of dude, hit the hole, and just a very, very tough runner. I think the 2 that fit more of what the Bears would want if they wanted a contrast to Foreman and Herbert would be, I guess 3 really, would be Gibbs, Spears, and Ashane, because they all presented, like, Gibbs reminded me a little bit more of like Breece Hall, like, not for nothing. I thought it's just in terms of explosion, I thought he was the most explosive guy of them. I think Bijan just brought more to the table in terms of all around, running back. But I could 100% see the Bears falling in love with Tajay Spears. 100. I mean, the guy that I thought he reminded me of was Isaiah Pacheco. Because remember last year it was like a Thursday night game or some shit. Me and you were just texting, and I was like, dude, Pacheco just like he plays football like a little flea. It's just like you can't get. He's just like such a tough runner, quick, like jittery. Like I mean, it was almost like Tariq Cohen, but he ran forward instead of side to side all the time. But it was just like this little like jitterbug. Like I can't even like. It was just like just this little ball of energy, like always running hard. Just always like very twitchy, but at the same time, not like I'm breaking one tackle at the 1 yard line or at the line of scrimmage to gain 1 yard. It was like, I can't even, I'm not able to articulate, but like Spears had that same type of like explosiveness to him, that same type of twitchiness to him, that same type of like, just like grit almost. That's the word I'm looking for. He's just like a gritty runner. Like, clearly not tough the most runner. Talented. Yeah, like tough. Yeah. Not the most talented in terms of physicality, but like it takes a certain type of dog in you to run that way. And like Spears, I can see him if he's there in the third or fourth. I think he'd be a perfect candidate for that Bears running back room.
You know what number he wore at Tulane, Frank?
I don't. Well, I'm
22.
He did wear 22.
Who wore 22
right.
in Chicago? Matt Forte.
You're right. Got the Tulane connection. You're right.
They're both, you're right. What would you call them? Green waves? They're both green waves. That's what Tulane is, the green wave.
Yeah.
It's an incredible nickname. No, I mean, like, here's the thing. When it comes to Dynasty as well, I think at a certain point, you're kind of just throwing things at the dartboard. I think a lot of these guys will probably go in the second round. Bijan, I would expect most drafts will probably take him in the top four, if not top three. If you're in a super flex, Frank, let me ask you this. If you're in a super flex, given what we talked about with the quarterbacks last week, what you've seen from Bijan, watching his highlight tape, watching just tape in general of Bijan, would you consider taking Bijan Robinson at 1-1? Granted, let's just say you know nothing about the team. You're building from start. You need quarterbacks, but you also need running backs. Go from there.
I would. I mean, I took Brees last year 1-1 in a league. To me, it's a little overrated to just prioritize quarterback just because they're a quarterback. You have to really think that they can do it. Like, I was screaming from the rooftops that Zach Wilson sucked since I scouted him, and people were still taking him 1-2, 1-3 because they're like, well, he's the number 2 pick. Like, that doesn't matter. You have to like know what you're looking for. Like, and with running backs, the elite of the elite guys to me supersede position, and supersede landing spot. But my overall philosophy is I stack up as many second round picks as I can, and that's where I pick all of my running backs, and I just hold them for 4 years and see if they can be anything. Because the thing is, running back is such a I don't know what's the right I don't know if saturate is the right word, but it's such a unique position because it's very clear that like the elite of the elite guys will still bring you a haul. We've seen Christian McCaffrey get traded last year in Dynasty Leagues, and he's going for a haul. Breece Hall I've seen go for a good amount. But, you can get serviceable guys like Khalil Herbert. You can get serviceable guys like Miles Sanders, like you could win, you can build not around, but like you can build with them on your team and win a fantasy championship. So like, I guess what I'm saying is I've had an easier time trading for quarterbacks than I have for running backs. So if I can hit on any of these seconds and package them to eventually get a young guy that you like in a year or two down the road, I would much rather take that route.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, I hate to keep saying it, but I mean, it's really true. Like, I think it really depends where Bijan ends up. Like, if he ends up in Philadelphia, I mean, that's a very, very interesting landing spot for him because you think about that offensive line of the quarterback play that they have there, how he'd be utilized in that offense. I think that would be a really good fit. But if he ends up on the Broncos, like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just using them as an example, and he's like with Javonte Williams there as well. I mean, that kind of, I would say, takes him down a little bit, right? I think it's really going to matter where these guys end up.
It for the most part, yes, because it's going to mean it has more to do with reps. Because again, we've seen, anyone put up 100 yards when, everybody's down. And they're the fourth running back on.
Donta Foreman almost put up 1,000 yards rushing last year.
That's what I mean. And again, it's not to knock running backs. I just think the floor on that is very high, generally speaking. Like, it's more about, like, are they having good practices and are they impressing coaching staffs and things like that? Because the 49ers churn through running backs and they all look phenomenal in that system. Like, it just is what it is. Bijan is the guy, though. Wherever he goes, he's going to be the guy. Like, it's just, I don't see, because he's not going to get drafted to, like, the Giants where he's competing against Saquon. Like, they're out on a high level running back. They may get one in the fifth or sixth or whatever for depth, but, like, wherever he goes, he's better than Javonte Williams. Like, he's better than, I mean, even if the Bears were to, I don't want this to happen, but if we were to take him at 9, he's better than what we have right now. It just is what it is. Like, you put him on a team that's doing running back by committee, he's the lead dog now, even if they stick with the committee. But I look at it like the same way that, like, when Travis Etienne went to the Jaguars and everyone's like, well, James Robinson, I was like, look, James Robinson is phenomenal for what he was. He is not explosive. He's not Etienne. Like, that's Etienne's job to lose. Granted, he got hurt that year and things happen, but
here's where Bijan is going to end up. I'm going to give you 3 options. All
okay.
Right? You're going to like every single one of them.
All right.
Number 1, he's going to replace Derrick Henry in Tennessee.
Ooh.
In the first round, because that team loves their running backs. They love that style of football. I think that would be an interesting fit for them. They don't really have a whole lot. You know what?
Now that you say that, though, one of the things when the kid in me comes out when I'm scouting and I think of, like, what player do you remind me of when I was growing up, and I had fucking. What is his name from back in the Eddie George? I had Eddie George on my list.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I kind of like that. Okay. The other team I had was the Bills. He could be like one of those late round running back picks that falls.
I don't want him to go there, though. They can't fucking use running backs to save their lives.
And then obviously the other option could be the Chargers. If they end up trading Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
Their depth chart doesn't exactly inspire any confidence with just, Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller back there.
Larry Roundtree just doesn't get the job done for you, huh?
I liked Isaiah Spiller last year. I drafted him in the second round, and
I drafted him like 1-6 somewhere.
Yeah, that's rough.
It was bad.
Yeah, but that's the risk you take when you go with a running back, unless they're a surefire thing. Like, you'd expect Bijan to possibly be. But that's why I envision him going to. I envision him being a Tennessee Titan. Because they don't give a fuck about other positions. They don't give shit. Do you think
Derrick Henry is going to be a draft day trade?
I think it depends on where Austin Eckler lands. Because
I don't think he's going anywhere.
You think he'll stay?
I think he's going to stay. They're going to hash him now. They're going to give him a little bit more money.
Man, that team is just not. It's.
How do you have that much talent and you're that fucking boring still? We should be championing the Chargers the way that we look at the Bengals and maybe not the Chiefs. They're like a head above everyone else, but like the Bills, they should be that fun mold. But like everything with them is a struggle. I don't understand it. It's so weird to me.
It's a great question because you have highlight players, right? You got Herbert, you got Austin Eckler, you have fucking Mike Williams, when he plays,
Keenan Allen,
just an insane highlight reel. But it's just like every game you watch, you're like, man, what the? I guess the simple answer is it comes down to coaching.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think it might be as simple as that. But yeah, I think that'll do it for this edition of the Bear With Us podcast. Like I said, next week, unless something big happens, we'll go over our wide receivers and tight ends. Talk about some options that the Bears may take because granted, I love the DJ Moore trade. I really like where their depth chart is at currently for the Bears. Still think they can add both in the wide receiver group and the tight end room because Cole Kmet's contract his payday is coming up. Do they want to make that commitment to him or do they want to go with their own guy? I think there's a potential they draft their own tight end as well.
They could. I I think you feel stronger about adding a receiver than I do. And I think we can talk about that next week. Yeah.
I do. I feel very strong, and I think you're fucking stupid for disagreeing with me. But I know our listeners don't disagree with me at all, and they'll tell you in the comments. But we appreciate you guys listening as always. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Tell Frank what a fucking jackass he is for disagreeing with me. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.